Hey guys, it's MugenLord, and today I just want to talk about Final Fantasy 16. Now, it's been almost like a year and a half since we actually seen a reveal of the trailer. It was a very early build of the game, but it had many people excited, including me. I just love Final Fantasy. I just love JRPGs in general, so this is something that I was looking forward to. And plus, it's a mainline Final Fantasy game, and it's about time that we're moving forward into the next number Final Fantasy title. Now, I know a lot of people has mixed responses or mixed feeling towards Final Fantasy 15. Me personally, I wasn't a big fan of Final Fantasy 15, but Final Fantasy 16 looks very promising because Yoshida and his team, these guys are really going to put some effort and work into this, is because a lot of people have faith in this team for the fact is that these are the team, and Yoshida is the mastermind behind Final Fantasy 14 and its success from the Realm Reborn moving forward all into Endwalker. So the fact is that he has a chance to actually headline a main Final Fantasy title. Many people are speculating, many people are excited to see what he's capable of creating as far as an experience for a mainline Final Fantasy game. And I'm super excited too. And ever since the game was announced, the game has been really quiet as far as its development cycle is concerned. And then we did get slapped with a delay due to the pandemic, but from what they showing off and what was said during the delay is that the game is really not that far off from release. Well, today we just got some information, or a couple of days ago we had got this information, I'm just reporting to my channel now, is that Final Fantasy 16 is pretty much done as far as development is concerned in the development cycle. Right now they're just optimizing the game to get it ready for launch. So the question is now, will it release by the end of this year, or will we get a spring 2023 release? And not only that, Yoshida has also said that we'll be getting a trailer really soon. And most of us are speculating, and I'm speculating, it may not be a Summerfest release as far as the trailer is concerned. It may be a future Sony PlayStation experience, live direct feed to reveal what they have so far, or what they're going to present to us as far as Final Fantasy 16 is concerned. Now, I'm really excited for it, and my question is how will they approach this game? What's going to make this game stand out from the rest of the mainline Final Fantasy games? Now, Yoshida did say that if he was to work on a mainline Final Fantasy game, that he was going to take it back to the medieval era. It's going to be more medieval fantasy rather than like high fantasy, or that more of that futuristic fantasy. He wants to take it back to fantasy where we may not even see airships and everything like that, which is totally understandable, because I guess he likes that type of era when it comes to his RPGs. So to see him take it back to his roots, that it's going to be more of a Final Fantasy, traditional Final Fantasy, like back during Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 and 4 era of Final Fantasy, that's refreshing to hear. I definitely want to see his take on that. Now, as far as story is concerned, the story from what we understand so far, it really seems interesting, is that the way the kingdoms and how the story is revolved around the summons itself, and each summon has an individual, I would call like an avatar, who has that summon that's within them. And the intrigue behind it reminds me of something like Naruto with the Jinchuriki, however you pronounce them. Like you get the Nine-Tails Fox and the different demonic beasts within each of the shinobis. And it seemed like with this, it's like they're taking that type of twist, or that type of take with Final Fantasy 16 in this story, where they use the summons as these beasts, and they're pretty much installed inside these human characters and everything. So the story is going to have some interesting conflict set pieces to it, and they going with a older brother younger brother dynamic, because you play as the older brother who's supposed to protect his younger brother, and some things transpire and it leads on to the rest of the game. So I'm definitely can't wait to see we get more details as far as that's concerned, as far as the story. Now, most of all, what I'm really concerned, or really want to know more about, is the gameplay itself. Now, we already know Final Fantasy, as far as it being starting off as turn-based, the turn-based Final Fantasy games, I would safely say now at this point is just over. as far as turn-based is concerned. It seemed like that Square Enix is pretty much going to, if they ever going to do turn-based type gameplay, they will just spin them off into other type of role-playing games, or Final Fantasy spin-offs may have them. But mainline Final Fantasy games, it seems like they're going to really go lean more into the action role-playing thing, which at first I wasn't a fan of due to Final Fantasy 15. I couldn't stand the combat, but Final Fantasy 7 Remake had pretty much changed my mind. It convinced me, it pulled me in, because I enjoyed Final Fantasy 7 Remake in its gameplay. It's been one of the most addictive experiences for me. I already beat the game like 3 times already. So moving forward, we do know that they have the director, or the combat director, that pretty much, I believe, had worked on Devil May Cry and Dragon's Dogma. So they got him behind the combat for Final Fantasy 16. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. So looking at from the little bit that we have seen so far as the combat is concerned in the teaser from a year and a half ago, it looks promising that there's going to be a lot of combo strings and a lot of intense combat sequences. Now, hopefully they take some of those combat aspects as far as the dynamic setting changes in Final Fantasy 7 Remake, how the bosses changes their sequence as you know, as you start progressing through the boss fight. Hopefully we see some implementation as far as that's concerned in Final Fantasy 16 with its combat. And also I want to know, will there be a class system in the game? Now, like we said, Yoshida worked on Final Fantasy 14. You know, that's an MMO, and it also bases the class system based off the original Final Fantasy titles. So will we see a class system in this game? Now, if they add a class system, that's why I love Final Fantasy so much, because of its class system, because there's so many different unique combinations that you can create with the class system, and it also creates a different experience depending on the player who decides, hey, I want to go with this class, and I want to go with this person as a tank and this person as a damage dealer, a healer. So I wonder, will there be a class system in Final Fantasy 16? If they have that, oh man, I'm already looking forward to it. But if you add a class system in Final Fantasy 16, if they do that, you got me sold. I'm just gonna be throwing money at that screen, just throwing money at it. Like, come on, Yoshida, just show me what you got. So I'm definitely looking forward to see how the combat system and how that's going to work. And also, questing and exploration, how's that going to work? Is Chocobos going to play a big role? Is vehicles going to play a big role in this game as well? I'm definitely looking forward of how expansive the lands are going to be, because you know Final Fantasy 15 had this one big open world. So will that be more of an open world experience? And we can't really use Final Fantasy 7 Remake as an example. We can't look at that as a blueprint for anything, is because we're only, you know, relegated to Midgard. So maybe if you look at Final Fantasy 16 and see how they work that out as far as traversing is concerned, maybe there could be some hints of what they could be working for with Final Fantasy 7 Remake Part 2. And we'll save that for another video. That's a great discussion. But I'm looking forward to see how they would handle that, and how massive and impactful and how much of a living, breathing world that Final Fantasy 16 would have to offer. And from the interview, from what Yoshida said as well, he said, he even acknowledged that Final Fantasy isn't what it used to be, and he's hoping that with Final Fantasy 16 that he would give you the player that single player Final Fantasy experience that everyone have grown to love from back in the early Square days, back when they was like Square Soft. You know, so hopefully we'll get something like that with this game and with this experience with Final Fantasy 16. But that pretty much wraps up this video. Like I said, it's really not much we can go off of right now. So I don't want to make this a long video, but I definitely want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the fact is that they're pretty much done Final Fantasy 16 and that they're just optimizing the game? And how do you feel, and what do you expect from a Final Fantasy 16 trailer as far as gameplay is concerned, story, characters, and all that kind of cool stuff? Definitely like to hear your thoughts. Hit that like button, hit that red subscribe button, because it really helps me out in the algorithm, and hit that bell to be notified for more gaming news, and definitely JRPG since it's Final Fantasy moving forward. This is MugenLord signing off. I'll see you Game Fiends later. Peace out.